All right, and we're live again. Welcome back to the eTourism Summit 2020 version. Our 21 days focused on winning in 2021. We've got an awesome panel today talking about some social media, which I understand is here to stay. So it's kind of in keeping with the theme of the conference, starting at the very macro level, working our way down to strategic planning, working our way down kind of through this KPIs, all the component parts now of digital tourism marketing. And eTourism Summit for 21 years has been the go-to place for tech-savvy digital marketers, and I'm fortunate to have a great panel of digital tourism marketers today. I'd first like to introduce Martin Stoll. Martin is not only an expert, a longtime eTourism Summit supporter, but he's also the sponsor of today's session. So Martin, I'd like to turn it over to you first to kind of tell us a little bit about you and about Sparkloft, and thanks for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. Excited to be a part of this. For those who have not heard of Sparkloft Media, we're a social-first creative agency with a big focus on travel and tourism. We work with many national, state, and city DMOs on social media initiatives. So this hopefully makes this a good panel to be on. And if you need more information about us or some of the work that we're doing, I think in the handout section of the platform, you can download a social sentiment report that we produce on a regular basis. The one we are sharing is the one we just finished on travel sentiment, which is an important topic at the moment. So glad to be here.
Martin, thank you very much for again your longtime support of eTourism Summit and for your support of this year's kind of hybrid event, and for all that you are doing for the industry. And then we're going to ask both Elise and Andrew just to quickly introduce yourselves. And I know, Elise, you've been a long time partner. Visit Denver has been a great partner of eTourism Summit, and I want to thank you again for making the time to be here and talk social media with us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This would be my second time with eTourism personally, so I wish we were all together in person, but it's still great to be here, and we appreciate you having us. Yes, so I am the social media manager at Visit Denver. I've been with the organization for about 2 years now, doing social media very hands-on in depth for about 6 years though, and this is certainly the most interesting time of my career thus far. I think a lot of us can say that, so excited to hear more.
Well, I guess Visit Denver is very near and dear to my heart. I spent 5 years back when it was DMCVB as the VP of marketing, and so I love the evolution of what you guys and your team have done over the years. It's absolutely fascinating. Andrew, welcome again. This is year 2 for you. Last year we had a breakout session on the workshop day live at LinkedIn, and wouldn't that be fun to be doing again this year? Andrew?
What I would give with all the talk of travel trends and how, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great. So yeah, just with all the talk of travel trends, I'm definitely anxious to get back out on the road, but to introduce myself, I'm Andrew Phillips. I am a senior account executive at LinkedIn. I'm something that involves a state marketing itself to people, whether it's travelers or businesses interested in moving there. Involved in missions. That's what I do at LinkedIn.
Awesome. Well, thank you for being here. I appreciate it. So, this conversation about show me that TikTok and social media and everything is changing so fast, and I've got a family of 4, and it's fascinating for me to watch which channels all the different ages are using. It's a really rapidly evolving marketplace, and I guess I'd like to in this kind of lockdown era, it's probably being used now more than ever before. Martin, what are you seeing generally across the board in terms of utilization of the different social media channels?
Well, you mentioned TikTok. I think that's a interesting one to start talking about. I would assume even those who are not on TikTok have seen the video that got a lot of traction. When was it, 2 weeks ago, of the gentleman in Idaho riding on his longboard, and without going sort of into details on that. But I think there's a couple of things that are interesting about it for those who sort of discount TikTok as a platform. When you look at the amount of views it's gotten and how it's gotten from TikTok into mainstream. So I think it's an interesting platform to look at, even if you're not on it. And what we see is, I think there's a lot of stuff that's moving from TikTok from a format perspective to other platforms. So you might not be producing stories and stuff on TikTok, but suddenly those features find themselves on stuff like Instagram and so on. And what we've seen is that TikTok is a format that a lot of organizations sort of are a little bit struggling with, because the content is so unique to it. And to be good on TikTok, I think only because you're good on YouTube or Instagram or so doesn't mean that you automatically know how to produce good content in that format.
I signed up for TikTok. I did my first TikTok video, and I am watching Dogface. So I'm now one of his followers, and he's prolific, absolutely. Speaking of that, I reached out to Gaithan Borden with Visit Lex this morning just to ask, because he had posted up a clever video that I think is a great example of destination branding taking advantage of this. Becca, could we throw that video together?
You say you want your freedom. Well, who am I to keep you down?
The one question you have to ask, looking at this Kentucky video, why the horse is drinking cranberry juice and not a local product.
that might have taken it a different direction, right? Tying the Bourbon Trail with the horses would have been a good one. But it does speak to the rapid evolution of social media. I mean, and again, just following my kids from don't even have Facebook anymore. It was all Instagram, and then Snap, and now it's TikTok, and it's fascinating, the evolution, but the utilization is certainly there, and it's played a powerful role in marketing and strategic planning for destinations, especially now when every destination is out trying to be unique and telling a story, and we have more to tell now than we ever have. So I'd love to kind of hear what your plans are for in Denver.
Yeah, absolutely. Visit Denver is not currently active on TikTok. However, we do have the username @VisitDenver. So if you'd like to go ahead and be one of our first followers, that would be wonderful. And I don't want to overcommit too much, but stay tuned for something similar to Visit Lexington. We have a couple of well-known big blue characters here as well. But that's the beauty of TikTok, is that it's very creative. Once something is trending, it's really easy to kind of adapt it to your brand and replicate it. Will, to your point, it's a really unique platform. So what we're doing on Instagram doesn't quite fit there, or what we're doing on YouTube doesn't quite fit there. So it is an opportunity to create new content and connect with new audiences. But it definitely takes spending a little bit of time on the platform to really understand what's successful and what people are going to respond to.
And it makes it hard as a marketer with so many different channels, creating all that content and on a tight timeline, tight budget. So really figuring out how to use a singular piece of content and adapt it over all the different channels is certainly a challenge. How have you found your team able to do that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I think for marketers and social media managers specifically, like, we all wear so many hats and we all do so many things. So generally speaking, when a new platform pops up, it's my recommendation to not just get on it just to get on it. You really want to make sure you have the bandwidth to do it well. Otherwise, you're spreading yourself too thin, and it's best to focus your efforts where you can and where your audience is. I will say for TikTok specifically, if we're still on that it's very, very easy to do on your own, no budget. The app takes a little bit of getting used to, but once you're familiar with it, it has all of the editing tools you need just on your phone. So you don't need a camera crew, you don't need a big budget, you just need yourself and your cell phone. So it's a little tricky right now, and a lot of us are spending more time at home or not out in public or at events so much. But once, depending on where you are, once those are more options, it's really easy to kind of get out on your own and cover it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Martin, a question for you, because I think in the same conversation about different platforms for different purposes and different, adapting different platforms. I mean, I might be, I'm sure I am old school, but I'm Facebook for birthdays. I'm Twitter for pushing stuff out and following news. I'm LinkedIn for business and trying to help, we utilize that to help promote our events and industry kind of thought leadership. Instagram, I'm not. That's just kind of, I guess, pictures and tagging. I kind of replaced the Facebook functionality for me. TikTok, I've done one. I'm gonna become the next dog face, but we'll see how that works. But how do you see that in terms of identifying and helping teams kind of organize and structure the purpose for social media? And I think, again, it's not just doing it for the sake of doing it, but the purpose and the expected or the hoped for outcome for each of the different channels.
So I think there's several layers to it. So I mean, you spoke a little bit that each platform, the formats are different, the audience are different. To really get something out of it, you got to understand that and then play to that, right? Sort of there's stuff you would do on LinkedIn that you wouldn't do on Instagram, for example. But if you take a step back, and I think that's also a big thing that we've seen in 2020, which I think is going to be relevant moving forward, is how consumer behavior is changing, which is driven by platforms trying new features. So when you look at, Instagram is 10 years old, then Snapchat comes out with sort of new features. Instagram sort of copies that to not leave too much room for Snapchat. Then TikTok comes, and you see again sort of some of that stuff sort of moving over. So even if you're on Instagram, it behooves you to at least understand what's happening on these emerging platforms, because anything in the Facebook ecosystem, there's a long history of copying sort of what's coming. And I would say sort of for me, the big thing in 2020 has been the coming of age of the stories format. I think that has been a big trend in sort of I think people are underestimating it at the moment. So when I look at stories, so basically for those who sort of don't know the terminology, so when you look at it from a content format perspective, a stories is a sequence of photos or videos that you as the user can advance sort of to some extent at your own pace. And I think a big element in that is giving the user control about how fast it moves and skipping stuff, and telling sort of in this linear sequence, you can tell a story. It's more than one photo, one post, and you put stickers on it and images. So the reason why I think it's going to be really worth paying close attention to is when you see how it's proliferating. So Andrew can probably speak to it more. Sort of LinkedIn came out with a stories format, which probably everybody was like, why is LinkedIn doing stories? Slack announced, and Slack, right, sort of an internal platform for collaboration, will have stories by the end of the year. For those who follow sports, the ESPN mobile app has stories now, so you can look at your content in a stories format, and you don't have to watch of a football game, the recap in a 2-minute highlights reel, because who has 2 minutes today? I want to tap quickly through sort of a story. And I think what's going to happen is, so I'm going to make 2 bold predictions just for the fun of it. So I think one is, I think it's going to come to websites next, so that on a website, you're going to have a content module where you on the back end can upload sort of stories. So if I were SimpleView, I would sort of start thinking about how can I give my DMO clients a format like that. And then I think another thing that we might see is non-linear stories. So when you think about it from a choose your own adventure concept, so I can go through a story, and at the moment in a story, I can swipe up or down and get to a shopping page or something, or you compare it to a Facebook instant experience, which sort of you can float around in different directions. Why not do a story format where I can control where the story goes, right? Because also producing story content is relatively easy compared to a YouTube video and stuff like that. So I think for it's a long answer, but I think one of the key things people should pay attention to is how do stories work and where they're going.
Well, while you were talking, you might have seen me take it down with my phone. I just posted a LinkedIn story with a picture of the four of you talking about a great social media conversation. So I only got to tag Martin before I ended up trying to be quick. But Andrew, great. We have a question from Sarah talking about just how people are using LinkedIn for destination marketing. It's an interesting place because you venture into politics on LinkedIn and you get shut down fast. You venture into personal stuff, you get shut down fast. But how can travel kind of merge into that business landscape on LinkedIn?
Yeah, it's so interesting, and I think it picks up our push into stories and the type of things that you see with stories on LinkedIn. They hit on a couple of things that Elise and Martin already mentioned. And the first is what Elise mentioned in the creatability of that style of content, where literally all you need is a phone. And now we've had video for a little while, and you've seen people leading with thought leadership or being at conferences and saying, hey, I just got out of this great talk and posting a video on LinkedIn. But what we're already seeing, and I used to sell against LinkedIn, so I do have this little LinkedIn hater hat that I put on every once in a while. And I was really hoping that we wouldn't just run into this, working from, beach with a gorgeous sunset or something, and that being all of the story content on LinkedIn. But what we're seeing is actually much more interesting, and both from an individual perspective and how people are dealing with the pandemic, how they're how the blending of their personal and professional lives are really coming together. And if there's any thesis for what COVID has done to LinkedIn, arguably for much of social media, if not the other platforms as well, is it's blending those worlds. And I mean explicitly on LinkedIn because it's such a professionally focused platform where we've all been on Zooms, where we've met each other's dogs and kids. And that is carrying over very much into LinkedIn, where, Will, you're right. I mean, one of my first jobs at LinkedIn was to try to sell political ads on LinkedIn. It was a horrible idea because people don't want to talk about politics on LinkedIn. And in fact, it's a big part of the reason why we don't allow political ads of any kind on LinkedIn now. But what we're seeing now is much more interesting in that it's this blend of personal and professional that is still kind of cued into professional existence, yes. But from an individual perspective, pointing out what their workstations look like, even talking about travel in the context of improving productivity, you've seen a lot of that. And just to name a few of the people that I think are doing this particularly well, not just with stories, but with video content and other formats on LinkedIn. Roger Dow at US Travel very frequently posts videos and interviews, just went live 2 days ago with a forum that was hosted by Salesforce. The brands are really pretty dizzying as well. Again, I was hopeful that the stories format would be used effectively, and it's KLM and Delta and Airbnb and Emirates and all these different channels and Tourism Kenya has done some really interesting videos, and a handful of others where they're encouraging people. It's a lot of the same messaging you see across the space, which is, okay, dream now and join us later. But some of it is overtly business focused, and some of it's just not. Some of it's actually inspiring individual travelers. So I think this is going to continue to accelerate. There will be some things that will just never be appropriate for LinkedIn. I do hold that true. But with this, it's accelerated what was already happening, where you're starting to see that blend of personal and professional content. And it's only picked up, and I think it's going to be a lot more interesting and not as boring as I was, boring and sort of like shamelessly self-promoting as I was initially hoping it wouldn't be, which is, I think we can all agree, some of the worst content on LinkedIn, but it hasn't been that way so far, at least from what I've seen.
Well, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because I find spending time on LinkedIn much more relaxing than some other of the social media channels where it just wears me out, and that's a shame. Martin, are you seeing shifts and in terms of directions of where people are starting to spend their time on the social media channels, and where tourism marketers are starting to see kind of the bigger, best ROI when you're people like Elise have got a challenge of time and resources and money, where people are focusing?
So I don't have any like specific statistics for tourism. I can tell you from personal experience on some of the accounts that we are working on that are non-travel and tourism accounts that sell online e-commerce companies, that doing paid stuff for stories, for example, has some of the lowest CPA cost when it's a swipe to buy or something like this. I think DMOs are lagging there a little bit. We have a couple of clients on DMO clients on TikTok. I think the interesting thing about TikTok is you can have a very benign video and it gets hundreds of thousands of views and you really don't know why. And you have others that are sort of have great that look great, but they don't get the same traction. A lot of it, I think, is just learning and doing. Other than that, I think another trend we are seeing, I think Instagram is interesting because Instagram used to be so much about people sort of, at least in Instagram posts, about to some extent bragging and sort of the FOMO and stuff like that. And it is changing a little bit, where you now see more people in sort of social activism is bigger, people posting about sort of what they care about and not just being on Instagram to say, here's the beach that I went to last weekend, and stuff like that. So there's subtle, but I think important shifts within the platform. And other than that, I think it's in general sort of, Facebook is getting, the audience is getting a little bit older year by year and stuff like that.
We were talking earlier. We talked a lot over the course of the eTourism Summit about the two things happening simultaneously: the acceleration of change, right? And so, it's like in the last 6 months we've had 10 years worth of kind of progression in digital technologies and social media utilization. At least when we were talking last week, we talked a lot about how that changing consumer and those new consumer trends have really changed how you have to think about how you reach out in social media to attract visitors to Denver.
Yeah, there are so many changes from what consumers are doing, from what we're doing. If we're speaking more on our strategy, there's been a ton of changes. With content, we've really shifted from sharing events and kind of more like specific, immediate date-specific reasons for people to come to Denver to shifting over to our brand pillars. So great food, craft beer, blue skies, outdoor activities. So we're really kind of getting back to the basics there, or at least we have been all summer. We're speaking a little bit more specifically toward events and programs right now. We have Denver Beer Week going on right now. We have Denver Restaurant Week coming up soon, Denver Arts Week coming up soon. So that's been a big shift in content for us. And then on the paid side as well, we just can't look as far ahead as we used to. We can't set a campaign for 3 months and then kind of let it run its course because the details of our environment and reality are changing so quickly that whether it's rules from the city or for our attractions, those change very quickly. So our campaigns now might run for a week, they might run for a month, but I am glued to Ads Manager, to the comments. It's very much a heavier hand with comment moderation and just reviewing. Like I have to keep a very, very close eye on community feedback more so than we used to have to.
Absolutely. I've been following an old friend and a former Visit Denver colleague, Rich Grant, and he's been quite the prolific Denver beer blogger lately. So you've got a alumni that's quite the
yes, he's one of our best advocates.
Ambassador, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
One other thing, I want to go back. Justin Brizo, your VP of Marketing, was on one of the earliest eTourism Summit panels and really shared some content about all the creative ways you guys came out and showed the beautiful city of Denver with masks and how is that content, take those videos and break them down into bite-sized chunks.
Absolutely, yeah. So we launched kind of internally, we called it like a recovery campaign when we were finally ready to speak to visitors. And back in June, we had a fair amount of data suggesting people or telling us that people want to travel. So it wasn't necessarily our role to convince everyone to travel, but to speak to those people who were already ready and make sure Denver was top of mind. So back in June, we launched a campaign. I think it was all or almost all digital. But it was showing videos of people in open spaces, people on bicycles, people exploring outdoor street art. At that point in time, we hadn't shot any new video, so we actually did digitally impose masks on some people for the creative. And then we really had to like sift through our B-roll and our photos and find not crowded photos, which is the exact opposite. You know, normally we want to show things as packed and busy and people having a good time. So we really had to dig through what we had and make it appropriate for the times. In September, we launched the second version of that campaign where we did actually shoot new creative. So we had people out on patios, people walking around parks, showing kind of a mixture of people wearing masks versus not wearing masks. But it was really important throughout all of that to give people a realistic expectation of what they'll have here of that experience, and then also really reiterate that Denver is a beautiful outdoor city. You don't need to be indoors to have a great time here, and for the indoor options, we're doing it safely.
Yeah, Destination Analysts came out this week with their updated study, and the industry has been amazing with providing destination marketers with great resources during this crazy time. But it clearly said that showing people being safe is critical for destinations, and making sure that our travelers that want to travel are going to be comfortable. And I think social media plays a really, really big part in that, in terms of the opportunity to have other people sharing that this destinations are safe and sound. And I think that also, Andrew, is something that LinkedIn kind of fits in well with. It's kind of it's how do you merge that tourism, safe tourism, and the safety protocols, because it is a lot more information has to be shared other than just art, culture, shopping, dining, fun for our whole family. Now we have to layer, all tourism marketers have to layer in a whole other piece of, hey, here's how you can travel responsibly. Here's how we're taking care of you. And we want to communicate to our industry partners that, we're inviting people that are going to be safe as well. So I think that would be an opportunity with LinkedIn.
No, you're exactly right. And that's exactly what a handful of the people I mentioned, Roger Down, folks at USTA, hosting fairly frequent interviews with himself, talking about the measures that the U.S. is taking, sometimes speaking about individual regions or individual destinations and the lengths that they've gone to ensure safety, interviews with the heads of different airlines to talk about safety measures and the quality standards that have been employed within that industry. So yeah, within the professional context, that very much is still true, that whether you're speaking to tour operators, meeting planners, the general system that makes up the nuts and bolts of the travel industry and those professionals, it's definitely a key way that we've seen people interacting with the verticals. You're exactly right.
Yeah. And Martin, one of the things that we've talked a lot about too, and I think tourism marketers over time have really kind of been flowing towards authenticity, and social media clearly helps drive that authenticity, and you getting consumers, user-generated content and all that. I think now more than ever, that message of authenticity and empathy are kind of the two new key buzzwords for travel marketers moving forward. Are you seeing your clients kind of leaning into those two directions?
Yeah, I think that has always been the case, right? Sort of that people look at social media as being sort of the authentic platform, how authentic how everybody succeeds in doing that. I think there's various degrees to it, but I think the tricky piece also with marketing on social media at the moment is because it's a two-way street. Sort of whatever you put out there, you will get feedback on, and unless unlike a TV commercial or print ad where people might see it but they will not respond to, and you post something on social and 10 minutes later you will know how people feel about it. And I think that's one of the big challenges of being a destination marketer in 2020, that for reasons we all know, this country a lot of stuff is very politicized, down to wearing a mask, and you post a video of people wearing a mask and you get sort of skewered by some people who think this is sort of not the way to do it, and you show a video of people not wearing masks and you get skewered by people who say this is irresponsible, sort of what you're doing, right? And so I think I have to give credit to Visit Denver. When I saw the video for the first time, I thought it was done very well. And Denver being a city that's sort of, more on the progressive spectrum, where you guys, at least correct me if I'm wrong, don't have a problem being out there and saying, if you come here, we want you to be safe and be responsible. But I think what we hear from some DMOs who are in different parts of the country, who have a bigger local issue of being like very outspoken about mask. And you want to attract people who come from different parts of the country where they want to see that, right? So I think there is ways to do that, whether sort of showing people outside, reduces the pressure of showing masks. Showing people from behind in photo is a workaround that. Showing people, that was in the Visit Denver video, I think was very clever. Showing people having a drink, sitting there, not having a mask on drinking, but you can see the mask lying there on the table, right? So nobody can say those people are not responsible. So I think that's sort of, there's so much thought that you need to put in today in the messaging, because if you get it wrong, you're gonna get hammered on people being unhappy about what you're putting out there.
And at least you kind of brought that up. I mean, you're now not a social media manager, but you're kind of instant research as well. I mean, you've got to manage the conversations in real time, and then you've got to, I'm sure, providing the feedback up the food chain, and this is what people are saying about us.
Absolutely, yeah. Martin, everything you just said is totally correct. There are so many details to pay attention to. You have to be super quick and ready to change and adapt. One example that I'll share, and it kind of speaks to the point of, for advertising, if you're putting up a billboard or a digital ad, you don't get that feedback right away. So you might just assume the numbers are good, it's working, like we're all set. So for our first campaign video, in the banners, I want to make sure I get this right. I think it said Denver is clean, safe, and welcoming visitors, or something along those lines. And our point was really that our businesses and our establishments are following protocol. The hotels are clean and safe. The restaurants are clean and safe. But this was back in June, and there were protests going on, and there was, civil unrest, and all of that was also happening. So I had those lines in our social media ads, and people really, really reacted poorly to those words, clean and safe. And I was able to kind of relay that feedback. And while we didn't end up changing our other ads, like our banners or our digital billboards, for the social media, because you're able to make these adjustments in real times, I was able to remove that tagline and change it to Denver is open and safely welcoming visitors. A very small change, but people didn't have as big of an issue with it. So I think that kind of real-time adaptation is really critical. And at least being able to share it with the team. Again, sometimes you will make big changes. Sometimes it might just be changes on social, but I do think it's really the only place where we can have that instant feedback for better or for worse. Yep.
Right, and for years and years and years and years, destination marketers have done everything they can to avoid politics, and now politics are throwing right in front of us. And I imagine, and we can talk a couple different examples on on the right or the left, or the masks or the no masks, but how that has fundamentally become an element of people's decision of who they're targeting or who they're not targeting. And we've seen examples of destinations that are targeting the Democrat women because they think that those people going to drive this destination visits are going to be responsible and not be a challenge for create challenges within their community. And other destinations are saying we're wide open, come on down, we're 100%. So we are kind of now in the political role, and that forces a whole different conversation and really a whole different skill set for marketers to navigate through the chaos of politics. And I don't know, Andrew, since you're not in, you guys have stayed away from politics, that probably makes that a much more neutral place to be out there promoting, I would imagine.
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely, and we saw this even 4 years ago while we were in the midst of actively trying to sell political ads, because there was not yet a proliferation of political ads, so that 10 times fast, on LinkedIn. Because there just wasn't anybody doing it, that was already being talked about even 4 years ago. But now because it's overtly in our ad policy, you cannot put political content on LinkedIn. And even if you do so much as mention the candidates by name, that has to come from a reputable journalistic source. So Wall Street Journal, Newsweek, New York Times, okay, you're fine. But XYZ brand giving their perspectives on, Vice President Biden or President Trump, we just don't allow that to exist. So it is a bit of a vacuum. People tend to keep things a bit more civil on LinkedIn just because they're commenting with their resume essentially as they're going about LinkedIn. But I want to kind of go back to something Martin said about developing empathy and personalizing brands, because it's been kind of a buzzword on LinkedIn and buzzword in much of marketing for a long time. But I think to go back to the stories format, it's really allowing this in a meaningful way, because how do you develop empathy and personalize something and personify something? You tie it to a person, you tie it to a story, you tie it to an individual that you can call out. And it's not just that you're going to Denver for Craft Beer Week, you're going to Denver to drink from this beer from this specific brewery. And you're going to go behind the scenes and see how it's made and why they were inspired to build their brewery in Denver. And what are the things that make that brewery specifically unique? Who are their employees? What's their family? What's their business culture? And we're seeing those kind of things pop up on LinkedIn in kind of surprising ways. So whether it's KLM featuring their flight attendants, or Louis Vuitton overtly targeting people with luxury goods, but talking about the ethical nature of their sourcing for their products and how they're created, and taking advantage of the fact that just due to the nature of LinkedIn's membership, I joke that LinkedIn's kind of the old rich uncle of the internet. It's overwhelmingly college educated, average income's 115K. Overwhelmingly these are people who are going to be interested in, or there's going to be a market for luxury goods, for travel, those sorts of things. So it's seeing those brands and the way that they're personifying what they do as businesses. I'm really interested to see how this plays out, because stories on LinkedIn are only 4 or 5 months old, starting in select markets. It only was released in the US about 2 weeks ago. So it's still a lot to come, but that personification, that empathy developing, whatever you want to call it, I think there's a lot more to come with that on LinkedIn.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yesterday we had an amazing presentation by Nancy and Elon from New York City and Company, and their All In NYC campaign, and really, built a lot of that on creating those deeper one-on-one conversations with locals and kind of building up the local character, and I think that did a really, really good job. Martin, are you seeing that kind of deeper dive in social media is starting to trend up versus the kind of direct, traditional tourism marketing?
So I think it has been going on for a while. I think that's one of the things where, again, sort of 2020 has accelerated it. I think we see on the consumer side, we see a couple of trends that play into that. Sort of everybody sitting at home and starting to make bread, and the pyramid where you start with your own sourdough starter and you get all the way to the top when you make focaccia art. And so
sourdough. Yeah.
Always sourdough. Sourdough is like the starter. Or you look at sort of this whole maker culture thing, which was already before, and now people sort of suddenly have time to, or they lose their job and they're like, screw it, I'm gonna start an Etsy store and sell stuff, right? Sort of, I think to Andrew's point, I wanna know, I not only wanna go to a brewery and drink a beer, I wanna know who's the person making the beer. And especially as we sit at home and don't have these sort of connections that we used to have before, I think travel, my prediction is sort of how we travel will slow down. Sort of, not that we're gonna travel less, but sort of we're not gonna go to New York City and say there's the top 15 list and I want to check off everything. I think we're going to take more time in neighborhoods or trying to understand the people who live there and stuff like that. I think the pandemic has really reprioritized stuff. And again, this was happening already before, but I think now it has accelerated. It's so much more important now.
Yeah, that was the Brian Solis takeaway from the eTourism Summit, that the COVID has been, a massive disruptor, but accelerating a lot of other trends. What else, Andrew, are you seeing in terms of accelerated growth outside of stories, just across the consumer utilization of social media?
Oh, I mean, just that blend of personal professional is a big one at LinkedIn, just in terms of how people are using it, what kind of content is or isn't appropriate, what people are putting on. Like other platforms, I'm sure, not to speak to the specifics of Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, which I'm less familiar with, but just as a whole, Mark mentioned this already, a lot of membership generally is up. Our engaged sessions are definitely up. Year over year, there's a lot more introduction of it, and as everybody's vying for attention now, because we can't physically be in places, vying for attention with things like LinkedIn Live, which is still yet a relatively new feature, but to speak to that acceleration point, now that everybody can't go to Seattle or can't go to the Select USA conference for my EDO clients, you can't physically go to these places, so you've got to do them somehow online. Taking those presences onto LinkedIn Live has been a big acceleration. We saw the same acceleration when we were relatively late to the game with video as well. But yeah, just the general less B2B style of content, even if it's doing things that are overtly business in nature or business focused in nature. I look at somebody like HubSpot, who has shifted a lot of what they've done from a messaging perspective to make it less specific to marketers and more specific to just professionals in general. Even tying in things like how to increase your productivity from your home workspace. And this is HubSpot, advice on that. That's, but general increase in video for sure, general increase in sessions, but that was already happening just due to the nature of what you can do on LinkedIn now. 3-4 years ago, that definitely wasn't the case. It was very much a job board, very much a place where you'd come when you needed to connect with somebody at a conference or, frankly, just look for a new job. And that's not the case anymore. But again, as COVID accelerated so many things, it's definitely accelerated that blend of personal and professional and the likelihood that somebody's going to come to LinkedIn and do something other than look for a job.
Yeah, no, it's so very true. One of the biggest challenges of the work from home environment is time management. And I don't know how well we do it. It ends up kind of merging everything. You're either always working and always trying to create some sort of a connection. So we have a question from Michelle Thompson, driving back the conversation to TikTok. I'll throw this out to all of you. Have you seen any DMOs that have really successfully used it as a marketing platform for destinations and attractions, and how would you recommend they use it to kind of market outdoor nature audiences?
I follow a couple. I'm sure there's more out there, but the ones that I'm familiar with are San Francisco, Florida Sports Coast, and then someone in Arizona, and I apologize if I get this wrong. I don't remember if it's Phoenix or Tempe, but there definitely are DMOs using it. Again, I think a challenge is just getting out, and you have to be there in person to capture this stuff. But they are definitely doing it. And I think we'll see more of it as cities start opening back up. In terms of outdoors and nature, here in Colorado, that's so important and so prominent here. I follow a lot of hiking brands. So there's one called Colorado Hikes. A gal on my team said that is how she's been finding all of her hikes this summer, is from TikTok. So definitely what's really amazing about TikTok is that their algorithm is very advanced, more so than Instagram or Facebook. So there's a ton of niche content, no matter what you're looking for. And the more that you interact with it, the more that it'll show you that type of content specifically. So if you're interested in outdoors, keep following them, interacting with them, and you'll just get shown more and more outdoors content.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about the algorithm. I'm looking forward to playing some more with it, and it appears TikTok's going to still be here next year, which was in question through much of the last 6 or 8 months. So, but it is an interesting and very engaging topic. Again, I could go back to my 4 kids, and I've got one with hundreds of thousands of followers, based off like one video that caught fire, and now she's constantly on it. So it's kind of insane. But I can see from a tourism marketing perspective, real-time, live, authentic, and it's almost a great way to get brand ambassadors to share the brands for you, and instead of maybe just trying to become your own big brand. But I think that's a big part of kind of how social media and using our local partners to help really elevate our brands, then destinations really have an opportunity, in my opinion, to kind of consolidate and amplify great stories that are coming out of their communities. Is a really good opportunity, in my opinion, for marketers today. Martin, have you any thoughts on kind of the TikTok examples?
Yeah, so I just to echo what Elise was saying,
Yeah.
I think if you as a user have not been on TikTok before and played with it enough, sort of that the algorithm learns of what you're interested in and shows you content that is tailored to you, you cannot understand TikTok by being on another platform and thinking sort of this is similar, just a different format or something. TikTok is so different just from how the back end works. I think that's the sort of the bigger difference than sort of the front end, what it looks like. But the back end in terms of what the feed shows you in terms of content, different than any other platform. And you gotta be on it enough as a consumer to understand it. I don't think that DMOs are completely missing the boat if you are not on TikTok today. I think the audience still skews pretty young. So nobody should have sleepless nights if you are not producing TikTok content on an ongoing basis. I think there's destinations that cater, for example, to younger audiences for sports marketing, because you have a lot of volleyball tournaments or stuff like that, right? So I think there it can be interesting. But the other thing that I want to point out is, and again, sort of just to echo what Elise said. So I'm in Portland, Oregon. My TikTok feed is greatly influenced by what my kids do on my phone and watch what they watch. So I see a lot of craft and arts. But I also get content about hikes in Washington State, which is just across the river. And these are not DMOs. It's just people posting secret hikes, waterfalls, stuff like that. And you watch the content and you go like, I want to go there next weekend because it looks so great. So the time will come for TikTok. I don't think it's sort of the mass appeal for the DMOs who are so strapped for resources today yet. But I think any marketer would miss out by not doing this sort of as a, not as an organization, but as a marketer to understand it. Because the stuff will either spill over to other platforms or next year it will have enough adoption that it's worth investing in.
And Julie from Ottawa said that to the point of spreading thin, they decided to not create their own TikTok, but to include it in their packages for influencers, which seems to be another way to get other people to help tell your story. Victoria has a question. Thoughts on Reels versus TikTok, and did Instagram totally miss the point? Thoughts?
I think yes. I'm personally not on Reels much yet. I might be a little bit of a slow adapter there, but yeah, it's similar functionality, but I don't know enough about the back end, but I would say they don't have the same capabilities with the algorithm. Like the closest on Instagram is their explore page. So there's something similar, but it's just not nearly as advanced. That's kind of personal opinion though. If Martin or Andrew have something else to share.
I'd agree with that.
So another element of been really within social is creating community and building bonds within your communities. And at least how have you been able to build up your support, and have you been able to grow your kind of connectivity with your local audience through social media through this pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. Even before the pandemic, I'd say our followers were maybe about half local or regional. So we had a substantial local following anyway, but all of our paid efforts obviously were geared toward travelers, to people visiting the city. So really, I think for the first time, or one of the first times, we really shifted our strategy. And back in May and June and July, we're specifically speaking to our local audiences. So I think actually back in March even, we launched a website called togodenver.com, which was to support our restaurant partners and share with our local communities where they could go to get takeout or delivery. Shortly after that, we launched another initiative called Love the City Denver, where we had daily trivia questions that each had a prize from one of our partners. Again, we just targeted that to Denver metro area. And And that was really to get the public here engaged, to kind of show their pride for Denver, and then to get them excited about what they can look forward to in the future. Dining, theater, sporting events, all of that. So those have been kind of two of the big ones. But yeah, that was a huge shift for us. We really wanted to keep our local community engaged, as well as show our partners that we're really supporting them during this time as best we can.
Absolutely. I want to switch over to kind of social media and campaigns. So what is kind of the time frame that we're dealing with now? Because you used to be able to plan a nice social media campaign, have a pretty good idea of what was going to happen, and now it feels like long-term thinking is anything outside of a week or two. I know you guys have a pretty good plan in place in Denver. If you want to share that, and then Martin, maybe kind of get a sense for what you're seeing from your clients as well.
Yeah, so as an example, I mean, last year our summer campaign started in March and ran through September. It wasn't one piece of content the entire time. It changed based on events and updating the creative. So it was somewhat fluid in that regard, but it was March through September. At this point in time, the longest thing that I'm running, even if it's a 2-month campaign with similar creative, I'm not setting it and forgetting it for 2 months. I'm building it out in 2-week increments or 1-month increment, because we do have to make those kind of slight adjustments, whether it's changing the copy, swapping out, if one photo is causing really negative reactions for some reason, I can swap that out instantly. So again, some of my campaigns are just for a week long, even the ones that are, 2 months long, and still building them out weekly or monthly. So that's quite different for us. We are looking a little bit ahead now to the holidays, which is wild. Sometimes it feels like time is passing really quickly, and sometimes it feels like it's dragging on forever. But we are at a point in time where we're speaking to visitors who are making future plans. And so on the one hand, while we have these campaigns that are running kind of weekly or monthly, we're already planning ahead for the holidays, with the understanding that everything can change and we have to be ready to change our approach. The product is going to be different. So how do we, again, correctly market that product?
Yeah, nimble is the new job requirement. There's no question.
I was trying not to say nimble or pivot, but yes, we are pivoting daily and being quite nimble.
Well, what are you seeing, Martin, from your clients in terms of timing of planning right now?
So, I mean, obviously the timeframes have become much shorter. So when you think about where are we all going to be in Thanksgiving, will we be traveling? Are we going to completely be stuck at home? Are we going to travel closer? Honestly, nobody knows, right? So the timeframes become shorter, but I think the even bigger thing is when I look at sort of what we do with clients or the opportunities that we see or what marketers have to think about is not only do you do your campaign over shorter periods of time closer in, but you're talking to completely different audiences. So when you look at, some of the discussions we had with clients over the summer was when everybody was focusing on drive markets, right? Sort of where maybe sort of there's an audience that in the summer would have the money to fly to Europe, for example. Sort of, we have, higher household income, and they say in summer we go to Europe, we go to Greece, we go to Italy or something. Now they're not going. And those are people who traveling is a big part of their lifestyle. It's just part of what they do. So how can you as a US destination appeal to those people who would normally take a long haul trip and they just can't do it because borders are not open? And what's the messaging? What are the buttons that you need to push for them? You look at travel around people who have younger kids who are saying, at least in parts of the country, the school is anyway virtual. Why do I have to sit at home? We're gonna go somewhere different to have a change of scenery, and we're gonna rent an Airbnb for a month, and the parents are gonna work from there, and the kids are gonna do homeschooling from there, right? So it's just stuff, audiences that 9 months ago nobody ever would have thought about, and then the marketing to locals. So we see clients spend a lot more money marketing towards locals and residents for two reasons. One is, you suddenly, as a DMO, where you always thought about the stakeholders are the hotels who generate the bed tax, now you suddenly have to think about how do we explain to people that it's a good idea if visitors come to town from an economic impact perspective, when there's people saying we don't want visitors to come because look how nice it is here when there is no parking problems and the local park is empty. Oh, and these people who bring the virus from other parts of the country, we don't want them here. So now suddenly you have to explain that. And then the other thing is, as travel is so local, maybe you can get some staycation stuff and so on and get people to stay in hotels or sort of, don't be at home all summer long, at least reward your kids with a 1 night or 2 nights in a local hotel and stuff like that. Campaigns have completely shifted when you market and to whom you market.
Absolutely. Andrew, what are you advising your clients, the destination clients, tourism clients, in terms of timing of campaigns?
Yeah, so, I mean, our lens right now is a bit more narrow than the traditional, let's just reach, weekend travelers and that sort of thing. But to take like a 10,000 foot look at it, there are some things that are just kind of universally true for people who are trying to market destinations. And a lot of the stories that have come out of COVID tap into some of those ideas. It's just a general trend of what I've seen. So who's the brewery that started making hand sanitizer? There was a clothing company in Florida that started making PPE, things like that. Those have been fairly long-winded and long-term campaigns because people still, I think rightfully, respond to those ideas where it's people coming together, communities coming together. It showcases the business ingenuity, which plays well into LinkedIn. But then there are other things that are much more short-sighted. So a handful of destinations reaching meeting planners, other general tourism professionals, hospitality professionals, with that, dream now, visit us later style content that's so popular. Those tend to be shorter terms. Some really clever applications of how to make that work well for LinkedIn. Atlanta is one where they created custom Zoom backgrounds, and I've seen a bunch of folks do this, but I thought they did a particularly good job. It's hard to compete with that whale shark in the Atlanta aquarium. That guy's an animal. But yeah, so the things that are a bit more narrowly focused, I just from my narrow client perspective in this, they do tend to be shorter. But then there are some things that are just kind of speaking universal truths that are a bit longer.
Yeah, so it's clear to me that a lot of change has happened in the environment, right? So this year we've all experienced more change to our daily lives, our business lives, our relationships and everything. Social media our utilization of social media has really changed as a result of that. I guess what I'd like to kind of wrap this up, and it's amazing how fast an hour can go with a conversation with such interesting and smart people in the space. But I'd like to kind of get a sense from you, and maybe we'll start with you, Andrew, is what of those changes, what are we going to see stick? What is going to become permanent? It's accelerating into the next normal in terms of social media utilization, and one kind of thought of how destination marketers can kind of be prepared to start to really take advantage of that.
Yeah, it's such a good question. And again, just coming at it from the lens of LinkedIn, my first thought is just that working from home is not going anywhere. You look at survey after survey, you look at The Economist did a big piece 2 weeks ago. Lots of bigger think tanks, and McKinsey came out with a study on the future of work, and it's a very in vogue topic on LinkedIn, obviously. But the idea that working from home is just going to pivot suddenly, and then in 6 months we're going to go back to the same office and workforce culture that we had I just don't think it's true. So with that, an interesting carryover from that is, okay, well, if Facebook is telling their employees you can work from anywhere, if Microsoft just the other day basically announced that you're going to have complete freedom to work from anywhere as long as you're with some implications and some tie-ins to that. What does that mean for destinations where you can offer up yourself not just as a vacation destination, but as a place where you're potentially going to work for a couple of months? And we haven't seen anybody launch anything yet, but a couple of really interesting preliminary conversations with some states on don't just visit here, but work from here. Work from a beach in southern Alabama. Work from a mountain pass somewhere in Colorado. I'm just picking, those aren't people we're talking to. I'm just picking nice places out of the air. But I think that work from other destinations trend, and destinations turning themselves into places that are not just marketing for the long weekend, for the long vacationing in a traditional sense, but offering themselves up as work from XYZ destinations. You know, what sort of infrastructure do you offer? Do you have the places in Airbnbs that you offer up that have high-speed internet? Do you have access to things that you might need to do in your professional life, but also have access to ski and hiking trails and that sort of thing? Within the lens of LinkedIn, I think that's a really key area for us and something we're going to be following very closely.
Very, very interesting. It's funny. My wife and I are already talking about spending a couple months in our cabin in Colorado next summer. So we're researching internet access to make sure we can work from home from the cabin. Elise, that's you. What are your thoughts on what's going to stick in social media moving forward?
Totally. I think there's kind of two components. One is platform and functionality, and on that end, it really is the stories and the lives. We thought lives are maybe a little more old school or going away, and they're not. It really allows us to show a real-time look at what people can expect when they visit here, to make that just perfectly clear and set the expectation. And then I think in terms of content, everyone's kind of referenced these a little bit, but other than events, what are we focusing on? Is it neighborhoods? Is it the outdoors? In our call last week, one of you brought up wellness and time with family. So how do we kind of highlight different components that maybe in the past we didn't feature as much? And now it's really becoming clear that that is what people are interested in.
Awesome. Good deal. And Martin, thoughts for what's going to stick?
So what's going to stick, I think, for one is, the acceleration towards digital formats from a paid perspective. I find it really hard to get my arms around thinking that somebody would do a billboard or a print ad when you simply don't know where things are going to be in 2 weeks. So that plays into the arms of the digital and social. I think the division that we see in the United States at the moment is not going to go away no matter what happens with the election, and that has huge implications on community management, because sort of if you do one thing as a takeaway from this session, if you are a DMO and have somebody doing community management, I think you should go and give that person a virtual hug, because they sit there and get bombarded all day long with like comments of people being unhappy, and I think that takes a really big toll. And then what Elise mentioned, what we talked about last week, I think there is I don't want to say a hunger, but I think people are really looking for a vacation or an experience that focuses on mental health and wellness, right? Sort of like, it is so, I mean, what we've been through this year, I think sort of when you think back with the social justice stuff, the wildfires, the COVID and so on, people are just ready to be like, I just need time to decompress. So I think destinations from a content perspective that can convey that message are going to do really, really well. So those are my three things.
Absolutely. Great advice. Wellness and personal wellness is a great message. So listen, it's amazing how fast an hour flew by. And I really want to thank all of you for spending time with us today. Martin, thank you for sponsoring this session. It's in Sparklock. We very much appreciate that. We've got a great panel again tomorrow talking about images that work, and that's going to be a real challenge to differentiate images. So please join us again tomorrow. And I want to remind everybody that eTourism Summit will be live in person November 9th and 10th in Orlando. If you're loving the content, we'll have some more great stuff for you down there. So Martin, Elise, Andrew, thank you all so much for the incredible contributions today. Very much appreciated, and have a great week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.